So it's really interesting that you mentioned about emotions, because it's part of a question that I was going to ask you. And I say this because emotional awareness, I think, is really, really important. And I know you think it's really important because there's an entire chapter dedicated to it in your book, Rewire. But the reason why I say it is because we were talking earlier about talking to a friend when you're feeling upset, or trying to disseminate how you're feeling, trying to actually say, I'm feeling anger, I'm feeling sadness. But sometimes we can't understand how we're feeling because we've not got the language and the capacity and the landscape. Now, there's so many different theories out there, and you've written about a fantastic one, which is Pluckett, and he developed this in the 1980s, and he developed this amazing wheel of emotions. But he's got 8 core emotions in there. Now, if I say to the listeners, if you're watching or you're listening on audio, think about 8 core emotions.
Yeah.
I'm not sure anyone would. And for the right that we've never been taught them.
Yeah.
And it fascinates me that we have these very powerful brains, yet we have no idea how to navigate the emotions that come up. And so a lot of the time we just feel completely panicked by it because we can't understand how we describe what we're feeling. So this is going to be a bit of a memory test for you. And I'm not sure if you're able to remember. They'll be really surprised if you can. But there is 8 core emotions. Can you talk me through them?
Yes. So we've got 2 positive ones, joy and trust.
Really getting into it, yeah.
We've got surprise, which can be either positive or negative. Anger, anticipation, fear, disgust, and sadness. The wheel does branch out. So there's been more sort of renditions of it where there's, frustration, irritability, because obviously they become more complex, these emotions. But it's fascinating because most people, like you said, wouldn't know how to name them. And it's, not a reflection on them. It's a reflection on the things that we are taught. I think that's changing. My niece has got, she's 3.5, and at school they've got these different flowers that they can fill up with different little buttons that they have. And green is envy, I think. Blue is, they're very basic. There's only 4 emotions. I can't remember exactly which ones. I've just memorized 8 of the ones that I needed to memorize.
The main theoretical ones, so it's okay.
I'll have to ask her what the 4 more basic ones are. And I thought that was wonderful because they're helping people. They're helping children understand their emotions.
But I think that's where it should stem from, because I think the whole anxiety and frustration of trying to understand yourself at the core level and understand why you're feeling these emotions. Because when I grew up, if I was angry, that was a bad emotion to feel. And so you can feel very constricted in your emotions because you basically brought up in a society of only experience X, Y, and Z, and that's a good outcome. If you experience anger, then that's a bad thing.
Yes.
And actually, we're humans.
We have to.
We have to experience anger.
Yeah.
It's how you act on that. Yeah. That is the important thing.
Exactly. And it's a bit like what I wrote in the book about stress. It's naive to think you're never going to feel it. You have to be able to cope with these emotions and these, stressful responses, etc. And the thing with anger is that if you suppress it, it becomes resentment. The problem with resentment is that it's a parasympathetic activity, whereas anger is sympathetic. It's, fight. And resentment is parasympathetic because it's trying to block you from being angry. The problem is that neither of those emotions are being expressed. So they manifest in different ways. They become bitterness. They become, jealousy, loads of different things. It can manifest in any way. And that's the true danger, I think, because it becomes repressed and then stuck.
And I guess similar to what Gabor Mate talks about, it then kind of holds trauma in your body, right? And that's what causes a lot of inflammation. And I know this can sound hyper woo, but there's a lot of science behind this of just how suppressing these emotions for a whole variety of reasons. One, just because you just cannot figure out how to deal with them because it's quite scary.
And we've been told not to, right? Don't be angry. I hate that saying, don't make decisions based off emotions.
Do you know one I hate? Tell me. Keep calm and carry on.
Oh.
That mug needs to be smashed.
They need to destroy that. But the emotion one, don't make decisions based off emotion. I understand that notion when you're, raging. I've written about that. But every decision is based off emotion. It's just that some are less emotional and some are more. If you get a job offer next week in America and you have a partner that's in the UK, that's going to be based off emotion. If you're at work and you need to decide, I don't know, various things, there's still going to be an element of emotion there. Emotions are never not there. They're always present in some form or another.
I think that's what's really important, right? We have to be able to name and process them and accept them. And I think that's such an important journey of emotional awareness.
Yes.
Like when I was reading it about in your book and every day connecting to how you're feeling, I think just stopping, as I was driving here, I felt really anxious and I couldn't figure out why I felt anxious. And actually I had to stop and say, like, what is it that is making me feel this? Because there's got to be a reason within that. And actually when I said it to myself, funnily enough, I started thinking through things that maybe have been stressing me out recently and I haven't acknowledged, and all of those things build up inside of you. But it sounds so simple, but it can be so hard to do when you're feeling a bit overwhelmed.
Yes.
Like, and something that I wanted to touch upon, and it's something that's come up a lot in my friend group, is kind of the overthinking, the over worrying. So some people might be listening to this and going, well, I'm always aware of my emotions. I'm always worried. I'm always kind of overthinking all these things. How can we stop that kind of overthinking process and actually see it for what it is, but not let it consume us? Because I think that's a really big part of emotional awareness, right? It's not just saying, figure out all these emotions and live with it. It's actually having the resilience to deal with it.
Yes, definitely the tools we spoke about. I'll reiterate them, the physiological sigh, journaling, naming them, giving it a narrative. Was there anything else? Singing it. I love that one. Yes. But, it is a process. And I think a lot of the times people think that the brain is plastic. Well, they think the brain is elastic, meaning that as soon as they have a bad day, they're going to revert back to old habits. But if you've been putting in little steps, that is still being ingrained. And I think people think that if they fall off the bandwagon, that's it, it's over, that's done. But the brain is not the brain is not elastic, it's plastic. So it's constantly changing if you're putting in the work. And that's, I think, can be very empowering for people to understand that one bad day doesn't mean that you've reverted back to your old, I put quotes unquote for anyone that's listening, your old self, So that I think is really important to talk about. But the book Rewire has a 7-step process. It's a 3-phase program. So phase 1, how to ditch the negative. So we unpack all of those negativity biases, the narratives that we tell ourselves, the stories, how stress, anxiety, and emotions can impact us. And then there's a neuro toolkit at the end on how to dismantle these firing patterns. Then you can move into phase 2, which is shift the narrative. It's a 7-step process, and there's things like visualization, which are all grounded in science, of course. There's a step where you push through the boundaries. That's a really important one.
Is this the growth mindset?
No, that comes in phase 3.
Okay, I'm jumping ahead.
Yeah, so phase 2 is how to shift into this new narrative. And, one of the biggest ones is pushing through that boundary. So you feel like you're getting somewhere, but then motivation, subsides, or you have a bad day and you again think you've gone back to your old way. So you fall off the bandwagon, again, quote unquote. And pushing through the boundaries is arguably the most important step, because neuroplasticity, the ability to reorganize your brain so that you can create new habits and change behaviors, works through repetition, even if it's 5 minutes a day. So it's really important to get those reps in. Like you said, you don't build, what was the quote? I love that. You don't build a path with one footstep. You build it with multiple.
A single footstep will not make a path on the earth. So a single thought will not make a pathway in the mind.
Exactly.
The power of that is.
Exactly.
It is what's happening in our brain with these thoughts,
exactly.
right?
So, the more reps you get in, it's like, let's think there's like an open meadow and there's a big tarmac road there. And that's the road you've been going down your whole life. But now you want to change it. You have to first, carve out the path, then maybe lay down some bricks, then put some lovely flower beds and then some lampposts. And then eventually a car wants to drive down there. So they turn it into a road. And that's neuroplasticity. So it can feel demoralizing because it is easier to revert to automatic patterns. But if you can push through those boundaries, even if it's just a little, I have the saying in there, little by little does the trick.
It's true.
And then you can, eventually that will be your new automatic, but it's persisting and believing in yourself to some degree as well. But knowing the knowledge of how it happens is easier then for you to embark on that.